Good morning, good morning, good morning. It is Tuesday, September the 9th, 2025. Welcome to the show. I'm Graham Hughes. You're watching Canada Brew on Politics Social. I'm in the beautiful city of Toronto at the moment, at the Toronto International Film Festival. Big hello to everyone in the chat. We've got Martin Harrow in there, we've got Billy Kershaw, Elle as well, we've got Diz, we've got Jacob Platt. We have got, who else have we got in there? Power to the People with Graham Price, SG and others. If you'd like to join our friends in the chat over here, all you need to do is hit the subscribe button and wait for approximately 1 minute and you will be subscribed, which is very exciting, I know. So, today we're going to be talking about the erasure of history. I'm not talking about the band Erasure. I'm talking about Nigel Farage and Donald Trump and how they want to erase history because it doesn't suit them. But before we get into that, as well as saying hi to everyone, we've got Tan in the chat. Hey Tan, how you doing? Tan and I have been cooking up mischief already this morning. Anyway, so before I talk about politics and all that shit, I'm going to talk a little bit about my experience yesterday here in Toronto at the International Film Festival. First of all, I was at the French-made cafe, which is next door to this hotel where all the celebs seem to be staying, and that was a lot of fun because it meant that people were coming in and out all day. So yesterday, I actually got to shake the hand of Guillermo del Toro, the film director, one of my favourite film directors, and the director of Pan's Labyrinth, Hellboy, and other great films. And he's got his Frankenstein, he's got his version of Frankenstein, which has been released. They had the premiere yesterday, and so along with Guillermo, who I actually shook the hand of, he asked me where I was from, and I said I was from Liverpool, and he said, I can see that, could tell by probably by the way I'm dressed. And that's the only way, obviously. And I also saw Mia Goth and Oscar Isaac even, who I wanted to ask him, I wanted to get him on camera to say, somehow Donald Trump returned. I just wanted him to say that, but we didn't have the time to do it. But also Christoph Waltz from Inglourious Bastards, yeah? And I said, I loved you when you played that Nazi. Oh, and that didn't sound right. And also the guy from Saltburn, the rich posh guy from Saltburn. He's playing the monster in this, so everyone was screaming Jacob something, Alecki or something. So I saw him as well. It was really, really cool. And I also saw later on in the day Dwayne Johnson, The Rock. I saw The Rock. I was a couple of meters away from The Rock. My God, he's tall. Poor bastard. He must walk around all day, like just banging his head into the top of door frames. Door frames must be his nemesis. He's huge. He's just he's like a giant out of Game of Thrones or something. He's like, oh my God. So anyway, that's aside. So the movies I saw yesterday, I saw the new Gus Van Sant movie, which Gus Van Sant was at afterwards for a Q&A, and he's very softly spoken. He's very, he's quite a quiet man, which you don't really expect it from a Hollywood director, do you? Because you expect Hollywood directors to be all brash and, right, I've got this great idea for a film, but he's very mild-mannered, which kind of makes sense if you think about his films that he's done, like My Private Idaho and Good Will Hunting, and that pointless remake of Psycho. Let's not talk about that. His film called, let me think. Dead Man's Wire. It's called Dead Man's Wire, and it's based on a true story of this guy who walks into a lending company one day and takes the chief executive's son hostage. Takes him hostage. It's got Al Pacino in it. And there's a few little nods to Dog Day Afternoon, for those who are, cinema buffs. But it's based on a true story. It actually happened. And he took this guy at gunpoint, and he took him to his house, his apartment, where they stayed for 3 days. And the police were everywhere, and the whole media were there, and they interrupted John Wayne. This is in 1977. It's set in the 70s, 1977. They interrupted John Wayne on the TV getting a Golden Globe or something, and to bring this broadcast, because this guy was insisting that he broadcast that this insurance company was evil. Not insurance company, sorry, lending company. This lending company was evil. And I've got to say, right, like, the film was pretty good. I mean, it obviously it's a true story, but the mad thing was that it was a true story. It's one of those films where you watch it and go, nah, that would never happen. That would never happen. And then at the very end, they show the actual news footage from 1977 of the things that you just saw in the movie happen. And you're like, with the real people that it happened to, and you're like, oh my God, mind blown. Anyway, so that was really good. Give that a good, 4 out of 5. And then I saw Hamnet, not Hamlet, which is also playing here, confusingly enough, but Hamnet, which is named after Shakespeare and Anne Hathaway's son, who died at the age of 11. And it's sort of about the relationship between Shakespeare and Anne Hathaway, and not the actress, his wife. Maybe the actress went back in the time machine. I don't know. But they had 3 children together, and Hamlet died. And there was a book written about it, which came out in 2020. And this is the film, the book. And it's directed by Chloe Zhao, who did Nomadland. I think she also did like a really shit MCU film. I think she did like Quantum Mania or something. But we won't talk about that. Anyway, beautifully shot. But like any film set in Britain, not involving the aristocracy really, it's just very sad. It's just people crying the whole time, people dying, people crying and dying, crying and dying. So I don't know, but an emotional film, but I wouldn't go and see it to cheer yourself up. Do you know what I mean? After watching Atonement or Grave of the Fireflies or Schindler's List, I wouldn't go, oh, you know, after that deluge of pain and suffering, I think I'll just watch this to cheer me up. I'll watch Hamnet. So yeah, I wouldn't recommend that. Maybe you could have like a Hamnet, Naked Gun kind of double build. They kind of missed out on that. They could have done it like Barbenheimer. Maybe had like Naked Hamnet. I know that sounds really wrong. He was a child. Anyway, but the point is, it's a okay film. I give it maybe 3.5 out of 5. So there you go, that's my film reviews. And I got to see The Rock in real IRL, The Rock IRL, which is very cool. Even though he hasn't been in a good film for ages. Did you smell what The Rock was cooking? I only heard The Rock so far. What? Probably saved my face. What? I had tooth taken out a few weeks ago. Bastards took it out of me with pliers. Whoa, what? I think that's how they're supposed to do it, mate. The Eternals. Oh, is that what she did? The Eternals. Oh, God, it was awful. It was awful. The Eternals is the film where Rob Stark would rather fly into the sun than be in that movie for a minute longer. There's just a point where, like, Rob Stark's like, fuck this, lads, I'm off to fly into the sun. And he shoots off into the sun. I was laughing so much at that bit, because I'm like, I'm with you, Rob. I'm with you, Rob Stark. I'm with you on this, brother. Please just make it stop. Make this bad movie go away. Anyway, so, funny. Liam says, I'm going to rewatch Lord of the Rings Extended Edition, of course, this weekend before I go on holiday. LOL! Says Liam. Brilliant. Fast 11. Was that the one where they went into space? Like I keep saying, you know, any time that you want to make a movie better. Okay, this is the rule, right? This is the rule. If you want to remake a film and you want to make it either 100 times better or 100 times worse, and you're not going to know until the remake is made, either set it in space or make it a musical. Honestly, like every time that happens, it either makes the original movie so much better or it makes it like the worst, the actual worst. But there you go. Damn, I got carried away and missed 15 minutes. Oh no, sorry. I was late getting started. So no worries. Aid is saying that Aid is shadow banned. Why is Aid shadow banned? Can I go into my... Hi there, Aid, if you're watching. I'm going to go in to my list of banned people on here. Who's been naughty? If you're not allowed to leave a comment because you've been muted, can you let me know by leaving a oh no, you can't. Sorry, shouldn't laugh. Let me have a look. Copyright and customization. Community. I think it's community, isn't it? Community. Oh no, that's just giving me a list of people. For God's sake. Bruges, says Billy Kershaw. Channeling A. Thompson. Let's have a look. Community moderation. Here we go. Right. Community moderation. Managing moderator. So if I make A. Thompson a mod, right, like a rocker, he should. Oh no, there he is. Right, Aid, I have made you a mod. Okay, so if you still can't comment now, I don't know what's happening. Just refresh the page and you should be able to join us. Right, back to what I was originally going to talk about, which will be about the rewriting of history by the far right, by Trump and Farage. So here we go. History isn't just about battles. History is a battle. Authoritarian movements have always understood that if you control the story of the past, you can control the possibilities of the present. History isn't just about, dusty old books. It's about identity, legitimacy, and power. And the story of a nation is told, if the story of a nation is only told through the lens of glorious leaders, golden ages, and we did everything right, and any bad things that happened were always someone else's fault, then ordinary people forget that democracy, rights, and freedoms were won by the struggle of the people, not by being gifted to us by the aristocracy or the landed gentry, which is what Farage and Trump want you to think. And fascism depends on amnesia. The Nazis glorified a mythical Aryan past. I think they talked about the Third Reich, and it was going to last for 1,000 years. And so there was obviously 2 Reichs before then, whatever. Today Trump and Farage are framing the modern rights as corruptions of an imagined time when the people were united, unquestioning, and obedient to the neo-aristocrat. I suppose it was just the aristocracy back then, but now it's the neo-aristocrats. As the author George Orwell put it, who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past. And we're seeing that now. This is not abstract. This is the playbook, and we are watching it unfold in real time. In August 2025, last month, Trump's administration sent a letter to someone called Lonnie G. Bunch III, the secretary of the Smithsonian Institution. The Smithsonian is like the British Museum, but for America. Okay, so the Smithsonian is a place where you can go and learn about everything, not just the history of America, but also the natural world and also the history of countries and cultures all over the world. This letter sent by the Trump administration ordered the removal of any exhibits that were deemed divisive or ideological. And within days, a list was published of offending exhibits, and surprise, surprise, they covered the experiences of Black, Latino, LGBTQ plus Americans, and other groups whose struggles compete with or complicate the triumphalist story, this origin story that Trump wants people to believe. So an exhibit noting that Benjamin Franklin owned slaves was labeled divisive. A display explaining that race is a social construct, not a biological fact, was condemned as ideology. I'm sorry. Right, so scientifically, they're saying there's no difference, right? Humans are humans. It doesn't matter what the colour of skin is, they're humans. They're just Homo sapiens. We're all the same species. We're all the same race. Effectively, race is a social construct. There's nothing biological about it. And this being taken away. Sorry, the idea that we should follow the science on this was deemed following. It was condemned as ideology. And it's like, no, surely the ideology is the bit that ignores the science and says, no, white people are different, somehow magical people who only do amazing things and good things all the time. There's a good thing that you did, Anthony, a good thing that you did. And installations about voter suppression and racism in America's democratic history were declared unpatriotic. So obviously, if you want voter suppression now, you kind of don't want people to know about voter suppression in the past. And these weren't academic quibbles. They were deliberate. It was a deliberate erasure of what is, for the Trump administration, uncomfortable truths. And by sanitizing history, Trump does two things. First of all, he delegitimizes the current demands for equality by implying the past wasn't that bad. You know, the slaves enjoyed their time being slaves, being whipped, being raped, being murdered by their bosses. In front of their children. They were having a great time, really honest. And then you've got the other thing is that it's preparing the ground for stripping rights in the present by denying they were ever necessary in the first place. And, this isn't just about a museum. This is about the Civil Rights Act. It's about disability protections, women's rights, gay rights, trans rights. If you erase the struggles that created the protections that we enjoy now, it becomes easier to dismantle them today under the banner of restoring tradition. And look, I have a personal beef with this because I feel like the far right motherfuckers are coming for me personally. It's the things that I enjoy doing. Like, they don't want me to travel. They don't want people to study history. They don't want people getting involved in politics unless they were born into it. Oh, don't get ideas above your station, Graham. I feel like that they're going after me personally. In the way that they're going about things, to try and turn everyone into this kind of drone, these sad little pathetic bastards. There's a brilliant song by Pamela Faith that comes out later this month, and it's about how it's called Good Boy. It's a really good song, and it's about these little knobheads on the internet sticking up for billionaires, and she's like, how's that trickling down for you? How's that trickling down for you? It's brilliant. It's a brilliant song. Really recommend it. Fascists always cling to the idea of a golden age. Don't forget, nothing that's happening today hasn't happened before in the past, and they don't want you to know that. You don't want you to know that, because then we might be prepared. They might go, oh, hang on, that happened in the past, it's happening again. And that's why you'll get people going, oh, it's Godwin's law. No. Even Godwin himself has said it is not Godwin's law when you're dealing with actual Nazis, okay? When you're talking about Nazis, yeah, you're going to mention Nazis. It's when you're talking about, I don't know, the Care Bears, and you bring up Nazism, then, okay, that's inappropriate, right? That's Godwin's law. But yeah, the mythical past provides this legitimacy for the ideas that are out there at the moment, a pure ordered society, before it was corrupted by decadence and outsiders and modernity and woke values. Well, I said decadence, actually. That's not the case, is it? Look how decadent and tacky and gauche Trump's White House is. It's disgusting. It's pathetic. It's like what a child would do to make themselves, draw a palace, like a child's drawing of a palace. It's just so gaudy, and I hate the fact that you talk about a neoclassical building, not Rococo. It's not a Rococo building. It was not built in that period. It's not Art Nouveau. It was not built in that period. It was built in a period where it was. The idea was that we were going to go for neoclassical themes. Like, you had the columns and the bit at the top that I've forgotten the name of, the tripartite. No, I've forgotten what it's called now. Someone will know in the chat. But it's not supposed to have gilded gold all over it. That's not the style, and it looks really wrong that he's done that, and it just looks tacky and pathetic. But he's a tacky, pathetic man with no taste. So what would you expect? So yeah, the decadence is not questioned at all. That's fine, but modernity and woke values. I'm going to say woke in inverted commas because obviously that's just anything I don't like is woke. But for the Nazis, it was the fantasy of Aryan Germany, unsullied by Jews and Roma, dissenters, homosexuals, socialists. For Mussolini, it was the Roman Empire reborn. The term fascism comes from fascist, is it? It's like the bundle of sticks with the axe in it. You know, that thing that's called the fascist or something? And that was the symbol of power in ancient ancient Rome. And he was trying to revive that. And that's why, technically speaking, Mussolini was a fascist, whereas Hitler was a Nazi. But fascism kind of covers them both because they had the same sort of mentality. And for Trump, the myth is to make America great again, an America where white men ruled unquestioned, where diversity was marginal, and where progressivism had no foothold, where human beings were kept as slaves, where people didn't have any rights. Someone could come into your house and they could murder your entire family in front of you, and you would have no recourse under the law because your skin was the wrong colour. That's the days they want to go back to. And for Farage and Refuck, it's the island story with Britain as the plucky underdog who doesn't love an underdog, forever standing alone against the odds, never acknowledging, that we had a whole fucking empire behind us in World War II. Did no one mention the empire that we had? That now, has morphed into the Commonwealth of Nations, over 50 nations in the world. Yeah, we were just on our own, though, really, if you think about it. We stood alone. No, we didn't. We were getting supplies from America from the get-go. We had the transatlantic shipments coming through. We were getting food in from abroad to keep us all fed. We were getting food in from places like, I don't know, India, Bengal, where they needed it, but we took it because we needed it more for the war effort. We didn't do it alone. And that whole, look at me, I did it, I'm a self-made country, I'm a self-made man, pisses me off when it ignores the privilege that we had to start with. Whether you're talking about a person like Farage, who go, I'm a self-made man. No, you're not. You went to a posh private school. Piss off. No one on my list of people who went to private school are self-made. In fact, nobody's self-made in this day and age. If you're a best-selling author, you rely on the public the state schools teaching kids to read, because if no one knew how to read, you wouldn't sell many books now, would you? These tech billionaires, they rely on people being able to read to be able to use Facebook and Twitter and WhatsApp and everything else. They need people to be able to read to do that. Who paid for those kids to be able to read? Who paid for those people to be able to read? Not the tech bros. I made it on my own. Nobody helped me. Nobody gave me anything. Yeah, that's right, mate. You popped out your mum and you made your own milk. Yeah, all right, mate. Yeah. Did you make your own sewage system to flush your shit down for the first 18 years of your life? Did you when you were walking down the street, did you lay that street yourself? Did you put down the paving stones on the way to the school that you built and the teachers that you paid out of your own engine? Bollocks! You were given stuff. Everyone was. But the millionaires who do this, no one gave me anything. It's the same mentality as people going, Britain stood alone. It ignores the whole, take a step back and go, actually, mate, come on. Let's be reasonable here. Let's be reasonable. We had a little bit of help. But yeah, the island story, never acknowledging the empire, never acknowledging slavery or colonial exploitation that shaped the wealth of the United Kingdom and other countries around the world. These myths aren't just nostalgic fairy tales. They serve a political purpose. They erase oppression. So calls for justice seem illegitimate. They delegitimize protest because the past was unified. Everyone got on in the past. There were no protests. There were no riots. There were no suffragettes. Okay, cool. Yeah. If you say so. There's no Jarrow March. That didn't happen. There's no Peterloo Massacre. No, that didn't happen. Did it? And these myths that they create, they justify authoritarianism because the leader will claim to restore a greatness that has been lost by what they see as the dilution of power. And you and I will call the dilution of power democracy. But they can't stand that. These are authoritarian oligarchs, the neo-aristocracy, born with so much money it'll make your eyes bleed just thinking about it. These kids who never had to fight for their country, never will have to fight for their country. Their children won't, their grandchildren won't, because they're fucking rich. And if you're rich, there is a two-tier system in this world. The tier for people who are rich, they can do what the fuck they like. They get away with literal murder. Literal murder. If you're rich. O.J. Simpson, he fucking did that. Do you think that if O.J. Simpson was just some kid from, I don't know, Compton, he would have got away with it? Fucking, of course he wouldn't. He was rich. He could afford clever lawyers who used the Wookiee defense, the Chewbacca defense. We're going to jump into the chat for a moment. Keep the noise down there, or there's a professional doing a show here, says Trip. Keep my noise down? What? Kirsty says, a little bit of history that was taught in school is simplified, so it'd probably be best if it wasn't taught at all. I disagree, Kirsty. I think we should be teaching more history, if anything. I definitely would not for a moment take it away. And that's just not me being precious because I'm a history graduate. It's because the same things keep happening again and again and again. And it's important that we make sure that the things that need to be on the syllabus, so children understand this kind of stuff, remains on the syllabus. Farage would love to take history out of the syllabus entirely, but we'll come to that in a moment. This isn't balance. You know, this is just this is whitewashing the past. You know, to justify authoritarianism, to delegitimize protest, to erase opposition. And what happens if the only story that school children are taught about Britain is Dunkirk, Churchill and Queen's bloody Jubilee, Platinum Jubilee? What happens when slavery and famine and empire are wiped out of the story? They grow up believing that today's migrants are inexplicable outsiders rather than what they actually are, which is the aftershock of empire. Britain went around the world invading, annexing, colonizing other countries. And yes, the people there feel they have a connection with the UK in the way that they don't have a connection with, say, Germany or France, depending on which country it was. But this idea that these people are coming from other countries just because they want all our stuff, they want to take our stuff that's rightfully ours, is exactly the myth that Farage wants. And it's the same myth that the rich use to justify not paying tax. No, that's mine. I like that. I like money. I like this money that I've inherited through no work of my own, no labour of my own. I just, a happy accident of birth, and I don't want to pay any tax on that. Thank you very much. It's the same mentality, and it's done by the same people. It's the same rich motherfuckers who are saying they don't want to pay tax, who are saying we have to ignore the past. Every time. And let's talk about, since Kirsty brought it up about history, let's talk about Refux Patriotic curriculum. So this was in their manifesto last year when they were running for the general election. They wanted all references to British slavery or imperialism must be balanced with examples from non-European societies. So you've heard this, we've all heard this, when they go, yeah, but people in Africa enslaved their own people. Yeah, they didn't ship them across the Atlantic. They didn't go to another continent and steal the people from that other continent to bring them to work in Africa. That didn't happen. They didn't tear people away from, the only place they've ever known. And while, yes, other places did have slavery, the slave trade, the West African to the Americas slave trade, was the biggest, and there'll never be anything like this because it went on for 200 years. Imagine the Holocaust went on for 200 years. That's effectively 400 years there was slavery going on across from as soon as Columbus got his arse into gear and went over there. Yeah, well, sorry, 300 years would it be? That'd be 400 years, wouldn't it? No, they got rid of it before then. Yeah, probably 200 years of the peak slavery. And don't forget, at the time, there were more slaves going to the West Indies than there were going to America. By the way, we think of America, we think of the slaves, don't we? Yeah, think of the Civil War, but actually, Britain put more slaves in the West Indies, and France, and the Dutch, fucking Dutch. They did it as well. But I mean, that doesn't dilute what happened, what we did, you know? It's a bit like going, oh, well, you can't teach about Britain winning the World Cup in 1966 unless you teach about Brazil winning it 5 times. Okay, cool, right. Okay, because we want to dilute the effect of people going, oh, that was a good thing. I mean, maybe we should do that. I don't know. But yeah, the idea that the British slavery or imperialism has to be balanced with examples from non-European societies. And like, when we talk about imperialism, we can talk about Imperial Japan. They invaded their neighbours, you know what I mean? But the British Empire, famously, the sun never set. The French Empire is still the biggest, which country covers the most time zones is a favourite pub quiz question. And the answer is France. Because it's got all these little places like Reunion and Mayotte and French Polynesia and New Caledonia and Saint-Pierre and Miquelon, and all over the world. Yeah, it still has these places. It's just technically part of France. Crazy, I don't know. Alistair, thank you very much for the first super chat of the morning. Yay! I hope it's not the only super chat. But let me just do my super chat animation. There you go. Yay! The parts of the UK have a rich history, but it's not taught in school. Well, when I was in school, only got into it when I left Scottish history. Yeah. And that's another thing. The things that England did that weren't very nice to the other constituent parts of the United Kingdom and to the Republic of Ireland, it doesn't get brought up. I wasn't taught in school that Welsh people were banned from speaking Welsh, and they had to learn Welsh in secret. But that happened. So yeah. What else have we got in the chat here? Sorry. We can't deny people non-white heritage, their blackness. We need to help black people celebrate their blackness, not pretend the skin colour is totally irrelevant. Otherwise, we deny them their beauty, says Gary. Yeah. Absolutely. And yeah, that's another thing that you get sort of usually posh people saying, is like, I don't see colour. Yeah, but society does, mate. And we need to talk, probably not on this show, but we need to talk about white privilege and what it really, really means. Because a lot of people just think, especially working class kids growing up in Bootle or somewhere, they're like, well, what have I got privilege? Because they're measuring their privilege against their peers, against other people, in their social group, and also people they see on TV and stuff like that. But that's not what white privilege is about. That's what straight privilege is about. It's about not going out scared that someone might beat you up just because of the colour of your skin. Male privilege is not about a financial reward. It's not about your bank balance. It's not about your bank balance at all compared with some other male influencer or something. It's about being able to go out to a party and get blind drunk and knowing that you're probably not going to wake up in the morning pregnant. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's a big difference. And it's unconscious for a lot of people. And when it's pointed out and we say, hey, you've got a bit of a privilege there, they go, but I don't. I've got no money in my bank account. How can you call me privileged? But that's not what it means. We probably need a better word for that. But I don't want to derail this discussion because I've got a lot to get through today, this morning. But yeah, what else did he want to do? So in this is I'm looking at the manifesto. My eyes, my beautiful eyes. I'm looking at the Refuck manifesto. They want gender ideology to be banned entirely from classroom. That's what they call it, gender ideology. That means talking about trans people, which Labour seem to have done with their new version of Section 28. So well done, Labour, on actually manifesting a thing out of the Refuck manifesto. And then private schools are to get more tax relief. Not any surprise, everyone in Refuck is a private school motherfucker. And then universities get fewer places, fewer people, less of the plebs going to university. Because if people go to university, they get wild ideas about having their say and things like that. If you keep the number of people who go to university down, then you can make sure that every private school kid goes to university, and the vast majority of state school kids do not, which is what they want. And this isn't about balance. In fact, it's going to make things even more imbalanced. But it's whitewashing, and it requires that every mention of empire be countered with an example with someone saying, yeah, Britain enslaved millions, but let's not forget others did this too, which is putting whataboutism in the curriculum. What? Like, Yeah, that murderer sounded bad, but you know, they only killed one person, whereas this other murderer, they killed more than one person. So was it really a crime if you think about, you know, it's the rhetorical equivalent of all lives matter. You know, that sort of disgusting truism that made its way around the whole fact that it was black people who were being oppressed, or still are being oppressed, but historically, and they want to do something about it, you know? And the Black Lives Matter was pointing out that, yes, of course, all life matters, but at the moment, people don't seem to think that black people matter, so we need to point that out, that they do, that black lives do matter, because that doesn't seem to be getting through to society. And that they say is, oh no, all that's, you know, hashtag not all men as well. It's just trying to dilute the message. This man did something terrible. Hashtag not all men, not all men. Yeah, it might not be all of them, but it's enough of them. Jesus Christ. Anyway, not all boomers. and meanwhile, the ban on sort of gender identity being talked about in schools shows the same authoritarian impulse. It erases it erases people's experiences that don't fit the narrative, the desired story that refuck and other fash around the world want to tell, you know? And it punishes them, actively punishes those who dare speak about those experiences or are experiencing them themselves. And Farage he frames this as giving children pride in their country, but pride without honesty is propaganda. Pride without history is indoctrination. If you believe your football team wins the league every year, then you're deluded. You'll be put, you know, they'll come and take you away. You're turning up to watch Accrington Stanley with your you know, League Cup winners 2025 scarf on. They'll be like, well, what's wrong with you? They didn't win. No, it's my belief. It's my belief that they totally won this season. Maybe an Everton fan doing that, doing the same thing. But yeah, I am proud of the achievements of my country. I'm also acutely aware, probably more aware than most, of the crimes, the terrible things that Britain has done in the past. Because I've seen the consequences. I've actually bothered to get off my fat arse and go and see these places for myself. Instead of just, I don't know, reading about them on the internet or something. You know, I'm not just trying to big myself up here. I'm saying when I'm talking to someone who hasn't even bothered, can't even be bothered learning the truth, can't even be bothered reading a book, can't even be bothered thinking for themselves, and gets Rupert Murdoch, you know, they pull that, the requirements of their brains, they give that, they defer judgment on anything to whatever Farage or Murdoch or Barclay brother or the Rothermere family want them to think. You know, they want them to frame any news article that they read around what Murdoch wants people to take from that particular piece of news each day, and they want to do the same with history. They want to whitewash it, and you know, like I said, pride of your country without knowing the history, it's just indoctrination. I'm a great supporter of learning about the past. I think everyone should, and it should be warts and all, the bad shit and the good stuff. And I think it's duplicitous to celebrate the good stuff without acknowledging the bad stuff. And I'm not one of these who say that everything was bad. By the way, I acknowledge that some things in the past were done well, or maybe not done with the best of intentions, but turned out better. And yeah, we seem to be moving to a point in history where things were getting better, but now that's upset the moneyed elite because they don't have enough money. How do they spend all their money? How can you spend that much money? How do you spend like £5 million a day? Like, how do you spend? Anyway, don't go on about that. So the 20th century. There's been this argument that the Farage and Trump and that they want the 20th century. They want to kind of repeal the 20th century. This is a quote from Murray Rothbard, one of the ideological godfathers of libertarianism, who said this in 1992. We shall repeal the 20th century because And today's right is taking Murray literally. The 20th century saw the greatest expansion in democracy in human history. We had decolonization across Africa, Asia, the Caribbean. Millions of people won independence and the right to vote. Civil rights in the US, segregation was dismantled, voting rights extended, formal racism was challenged. We had the breakdown of the apartheid regime in South Africa. We had women's rights coming up all over the world. We have universal suffrage, workplace provisions, reproductive rights. Don't forget, until the 1970s, women couldn't get a mortgage unless their father signed off on it. Like, a woman living alone could not get a mortgage on a house, even if she was working for the bank that offered the fucking mortgages, right? Okay, so we were getting better. We were getting better. And also labour rights, with unions and the weekends and the welfare state, health and safety laws, all that kind of stuff came in because of unions pushing for it, and governments, to give them their due, governments going, okay, yeah, we should have health and safety in place to make sure these buildings don't collapse, to make sure this oil platform doesn't explode, to make sure, you know, these people aren't crushed to death in a football stadium. None of this was inevitable. These gains were fought for tooth and nail, often against exactly the kind of elites that Trump and Farage personify. And if the right can erase these struggles, they can argue that the right to vote, the right to life, the right to marry and divorce and everything else, you know, were benevolent gifts, gifted from on high, from the Godhead, from the divine right, absolute monarch, and therefore can be taken back. A capricious Godhead can, you know, give gifts, can take away gifts whenever they want. And it doesn't acknowledge that it was the people that fought for these rights. Usually, you know, at the end of a gun or the end of a sword. Like, you know, it was, people died. A lot of people died. It wasn't just one day a supreme ruler of a particular country went, do you know what, I think we're going to have some democracy now. You know, there was pressure, always in every situation, there was pressure put on them from inside, from outside, from somewhere else to change. Because a lot of people, that you know, that they've grown up in privilege, they've grown up as part of a royal family, they don't care, you know. Look at Prince bloody Andrew, imagine if he was in charge of the country, Jesus Christ. But yeah, imagine telling children that the NHS, for instance, was just handed down by generous elites like Nigel Farage, not built through decades of working class struggle. The lesson isn't you can fight for better, it's wait politely for crumbs, and that is possibly the biggest danger of erasing history, making people go. And this is what they want. And whenever you hear anyone have a go at anyone making politics content, left-wing politics content on the internet, Tansky gets this in particular, if you're still watching Town High, it's people saying, shut up, stop talking. I want you to not talk. And they will bully and they will harass and they will send death threats and worse to people, and they will do this because they want that person driven off the platform. They want them to stop making comments. They want them to shut up. And this is erasing the voice of people who are not in power. This is erasing the voices of people who are not in in positions of authority, or they don't own a newspaper or whatever. Because the internet, to these vile cretins like Trump and Farage, the internet's an anathema to them. They hate it because it allows plebs like me to be able to do shows like this. They hate that. They would like to stop this, and they will. If they get a chance, they will absolutely stop this, or they'll use this to identify me as a subversive and therefore throw the book at me when they're in power. So this is the real danger that we're seeing now of forgetting the past. You know, become the Lotus Eaters. That is something that we should not ever do. Erasure serves authoritarianism. Erasing the empire, the British Empire, allows the crimes of the British Empire, I should say, because they want people to have a warm and fuzzy feeling about the empire. I don't. I have a. How does it make me feel? It doesn't make me feel proud. It makes me feel a bit sheepish, especially if I'm in a particular country that well and truly got screwed over by the British Empire. I'm in Canada at the moment. You talk to the First Nations people here, that that they had their lives ruined. You talk to Aboriginals in Australia, they had the whole 50,000 years of civilization in Australia. 50,000 years, 10 times older than the fucking pyramids. And they were just getting on with stuff. And then Whitey came along, the British Empire came along and fucked things for them. And destroyed their history, destroyed their totems, destroyed their sacred sites, and destroyed their history. And now we're doing it to ourselves, or the rich are trying to do it to us. And the erasing the empire and the bad things the empire did, and sugarcoating it, so spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. It's part of an argument that Farage likes to make, that Britain owes nothing to migrants, which isn't true, especially if they're coming from a country that was affected by the British Empire in the past. And nearly all countries were. So there you go. But the thing is, there's not many Algerian asylum seekers that come to Britain. Why is that? Well, because in Algeria, a lot of people speak French. It was a French colonial possession until very recently. I think it was the 1960s, before Algeria got independent. So, that's insane. It's a francophone country. So when refugees come from Algeria, they'll go to France because they speak the language. A lot of Libyan refugees go to Italy because that was an Italian colony. I don't think there's many refugees coming up from Burkina Faso or Namibia to Germany, but they've taken a lot of Turkish refugees because there is a historic connection between Turkey and Germany. They fought on the same side in World War One, after all. The idea that Britain owes nothing to migrants it does not, and even if that was true, we still need migration, so fuck off, Nigel. But then also, evading civil rights allows Trump to argue that diversity is a illegitimate distortion of the true balance of nature, with all the rich at the top deciding what we are and aren't allowed to do. And erasing workers' struggles allows billionaires to argue that unions are parasites and people don't need any money. They didn't need money in the past, did they? And they achieved all this stuff. And the Rights Project is not just about the past, it's about reshaping the future into a world where protest is illegitimate, resistance is forgotten, and inequality is naturalised. And this is why it matters when a museum exhibit is closed or when a school curriculum is rewritten. These aren't minor culture war skirmishes. This is the narrative doorway which allows authoritarian laws and regimes in. And what we're seeing from Washington to Westminster is a systematic dismantling of democratic memory. And Trump's Trump's Smithsonian purge shows how authoritarianism erases diversity and struggle away from the history of America. And Farage's Patriotic curriculum shows how British Empire and slavery are being sanitized into this sort of like harmless heritage where we all think the past was all creatures great and small and last of the summer wine and good night sweetheart and all this kind of stuff. The sanitizing of history I find very, very disturbing. And both projects share the same goal. It's to repeal the 20th century, to roll back democracy and to restore elite control, which is what we had 100 years ago in places like Italy and coming up at the time in Germany. That's what they want to replace, History isn't abstract, If we forget that slavery, famine, massacres were real, we also forget that resistance was possible and resistance worked. We are the result of 1,000 different, millions of different acts of defiance got us to where we are today by ordinary people, not by kings and queens and oligarchs, but by ordinary people fighting back. And they want to pretend that there's nothing we can do. There's nothing we can do. People will just shrug and say, oh well. But here's the thing, there's always something we can do. Even if it's just writing a letter to our MP and hassling them to do the right thing, there's always something we can do. So let's talk a little bit about the Farage and how he wants to sort of bury the past in Britain in particular. The island story myth. This idea that Britain's this like plucky underdog. Fuck off. We had the biggest empire the world's ever fucking seen. You know, this plucky island nation that was forever noble, always standing up for freedom. The reality is we went around the world and we raped and pillaged. That's what we did. We stole shitloads of money and riches and jewels and people from other countries. And we made a shit ton of money out of it. The secret ingredient was crime. Lots of crime. If you see the empire as a big criminal enterprise, then it makes a lot more sense of why we did the things we did. Look at what happened in China, the 2 opium wars. Not 1, but 2 opium wars that we had with China. One of which resulted in the British and the French teaming up to burn down the Winter Palace, a beautiful building that was just completely destroyed, and ended up with Britain taking Hong Kong for 100 years. Because the Chinese refused to sell our smack. That was it. We're like, come on, we want to sell this opium to your people. And they were like, everyone's off their tits on opium. They're not getting any work done. They're just falling asleep in some kind of, drug-fueled reverie. And it's like, no, we're going to sell you this stuff because there was a rule at the time that they would only accept things paid for in silver, was it? Silver? They wouldn't accept money. There was just silver they accepted. Was that it? Or gold? I don't know, something like that. But whatever the setup was, the British couldn't just pay with British pounds and say, is there a Thomas Cook Bureau de Change around here, old chap? They had to pay for it in a particular commodity that the Chinese wanted. And the best way to get that commodity was to sell opium to the people of China and get that commodity out of them. And then use that commodity for, I don't know, buying more stuff, buying tea. They wanted to buy tea. and so, yeah, Britain was not a victim of history, and I find it quite embarrassing that people want us to be the victim. I mean, how pathetic, how subservient. I mean, you're going to be proud of your past. Okay, be proud of it then. Oh, you did those bad things. Yeah, but that wasn't our fault. It was. And if you're going to be a knobhead about it, go on, be a proper knobhead about it. Say, that was a great thing you did there. That was a good thing you did, Anthony. That was a good thing you did. And so the idea that Britain is a victim of history, when it was one of the biggest perpetrators of violence, slavery, looting, and empire in the history of the world. I mean, we're not even talking about like in a particular era. We're talking about in the history of the world. And just go on, no, we were actually the victims if you think about it. It's Darvo, isn't it? It's deny, attack, reverse, victim and offender. It's a narcissist prayer. Wasn't me, but if it was, then you probably deserved it. That is trying to use the narcissist prayer as a prism to view the past is just, or a lens to view the past is just, it's bonkers. It's not history. It's propaganda. And it's dangerous because when the crimes of empire are erased, then the policies of empire can be repeated. Because people are like, oh, well, that wasn't a bad thing, was it? The patriotic curriculum, Farage calls it. Telling children the victories and editing out all the atrocities. More than 3 million Africans were transported between 1640 and 1807. 3 million Africans were transported, at least. It was probably way, way more than that. Obviously, I'm from Liverpool, which became the hub of trade, and we have a slavery museum in Liverpool, quite rightly, which is being expanded at the moment, by the way, which is well worth seeing if you do come to Liverpool. But Bristol, London, not far behind. At least Liverpool has gone some way to acknowledge the crimes of the past. Ships carried textiles and guns to Africa, enslaved Africans to the Americas, and sugar, cotton, and tobacco back to Britain. And it was the triangle, the slave trade triangle. It built the fortunes of bankers, industrialists, and aristocrats. Most of the amazing prestige buildings that we see today, that were Grade 1 listed from the 1800s, were built with slave money. Even after it was banned in 1807, because it wasn't banned in the Empire until the 1830s. And to be honest with you, we were still propping up the deep south of America with slaves until the American Civil War. In fact, during the American Civil War, the Confederate flag was flown from Liverpool's town hall. So yeah, oh no, we got rid of slavery. Yeah, all right, mate. And who got the compensation? Not the slaves, the slave owners. So the interest on the payments was only paid off in the 2010s. by the way, the money that we gave to the slave owners, the slave owning estates. That money was only paid off by us, by the taxpayer, in the 2010s. So we were still paying off effectively. I mean, the money was given to them in the 1800s, but the government had to borrow money, so we were paying off that debt to pay off the slave, to compensate the slave owners. Absolute fucking madness. But without slavery, Britain's industrial revolution would have been impossible. The profits from slave plantations in the Caribbean, they underwrote the cost of building factories, railways, canals. The city of London itself was built on the backs of slaves. And yet, Reform's balanced history says, if we talk about Britain's role, we must also mention Africans who sold captives to Europeans. It's a deliberate minimization of what happened. And it would be like if a country in Africa came and invaded Britain and took over a part of Britain, and then British people were selling, a Scouser would sell someone from Manchester so that they wouldn't get sold into slavery themselves. It was more of an act of self-preservation more than anything else. But the amount of money that the slave traders got in West Africa was buttons compared with how much money the British made by employing these slaves for years, for like up to 50 years, maybe more, working for them for free. Some African kingdoms were involved, but Britain industrialized the trade, scaled it to millions, treated people as units of cargo, and African complicity is used as a fig leaf to obscure Britain's central role. It's like saying, oh, this Jewish person killed someone, so why are we even talking about the Holocaust? Sorry, what, you're comparing like one murder with the fucking Holocaust? Is that really the way you want to go? Oh my God. And this is what it's like talking to them, and you've probably experienced this yourself. I certainly have, talking to these lunatics who are like, yeah, Britain was great in the past. Oh yeah, well, they enslaved people too, And I'm like, no, it wasn't industrial, mate. It wasn't industrialized, okay? It's a difference. And yeah, and then if you talk about the Holocaust, you say, well, there was the pogroms in Russia. There was the expulsion of Jews and Muslims in 1492 from what's now Spain. There was the expulsion of Jews from the UK, England at the time, or whatever, proto-England and a bit of France, which is in the 1300s. It's happened time and time again. But that doesn't dilute what happened in the Holocaust. Do you know what I mean? If Germany said, the Holocaust was bad, but other people killed people too, it would just sound absurd. It would sound like, excuse me, Germany, are you kidding? This is what you're going to teach your kids? All murders matter equally, whether it's 6 million or 1. I'm like, well, the attempted eradication of entire people, sort of by a government, I think is, degrees of magnitude worse than a single person going out and stabbing someone who happens to come from a particular ethnic minority, the murderer, I mean. But, the colonial atrocities that we had, I mentioned earlier about Bengal, that was in 1943, right? And this was caused by British wartime wartime policy, not drought. This was not caused by a drought. Churchill diverted grain into Europe while millions in India starved, and the death toll was around 3 million people. Churchill's comments at the time, he said, I hate Indians. They are beastly people with a beastly religion. Good old Churchill. And he asked why Gandhi hadn't died yet. Good old Churchill. And then you had the Amritsar massacre under General Dyer in 1919, which features in the movie Gandhi with Ben Kingsley, in which the British troops fired on unarmed civilians gathered in Jallianwala Bagh, and they killed hundreds. Estimates of up to 1,000 or over 1,000 people were shot dead. Unarmed men, women and children. And Dyer was hailed as a hero by many in Britain and faced no punishment for that. And then we have the partition of India, which I've mentioned before. It was botched. It's just like our retreat from the EU was botched. It should have taken several years. It should have taken 5 years for everything to be put in place. But no, we needed to rush it through and get it done. And we did the same thing in India. it was supposed to be a 5-year plan to split India into different regions for different kind of based on religion. But India is supposed to be secular, and then Pakistan, East Pakistan and West Pakistan was supposed to be for a Muslim homeland, and it didn't quite work out that way. But those lines on those maps, right, that you see today, were not drawn by people from India or people from Pakistan or from Bangladesh, which didn't exist until the 1970s. It was drawn by a British guy who had never been to India before. And instead of it taking 5 years for the handover to happen, it took 6 months. It was rushed, and over 2 million people died. And 15 million were displaced in sectarian violence, as Muslims were attacked up in the Punjab and in India, and Hindus were attacked in what's now Pakistan. One of the worst humanitarian disasters in history. Britain did that. Under a Labour government, by the way. Next time someone tries to tell you that Labour were, always right on in the past. No, they weren't. Yeah, in Farage's heritage curriculum, India is remembered, for like railways and cricket, and the mass death, the racism, the exploitation, that all vanishes away. And don't forget, when the British East India Company was founded in 1600 under the reign of Queen Elizabeth I, Britain was India, what's now India, was the richest region in the world. By a mile. It had more money than the whole of the European nations put together at that time. More money than all the gold in Versailles. And when we left in 1947, it was one of the poorest regions in the world. Yeah, we're helping. And that's hardly ever mentioned. And it should be. It absolutely should be. I don't think that the curriculum at the moment goes far enough, but Farage wants to stop it going anywhere near those salient talking points. And then we can talk for a moment about Ireland. 1845 to 1852, the Great Famine. 1 million people died, another 1 million fled. The population of India still hasn't recovered to this day from that atrocity. Food was exported from Ireland to England, even as the Irish starved. The British politicians, they blamed the Irish themselves. They treated the famine as a moral failing rather than a political crime, which is what it was. And Ireland is rarely taught as part of the empire because it disrupts the idea of Britain as a civilizer. Instead, Refux's myth about the Irish famine was tragic, but they said it was natural, ignoring the deliberate economic choices that turned a blight into a genocide, which is, time and time again, we see this. Whenever you see on the news there's a famine, there doesn't have to be. They're always, in this day and age, they are man-made. Look what's happening in Gaza at the moment. Famine in Gaza, man-made. In the 1980s in Ethiopia, that famine that they had in Ethiopia, that's because of a fucking civil war. That wasn't because all the crops failed and everyone was, didn't have anything to eat. The food was there. The logistics could have been there, but they were disrupted by a brutal civil war that was going on in the 1980s in Ethiopia. And this happens time and time again. The Biafra in Nigeria in the 1960s, same thing. It was a man-made famine. It was a man-made disaster. And this idea that the Irish famine, the Great Famine, was natural. It was a fault of the Irish. They relied entirely on potatoes, and it was like, who made it so they relied entirely on one crop? Oh, was that the British? Okay, cool. And then we've got in Africa the Mau Mau uprising in 1952 to 1960. That uprising in Kenya, the tens of thousands of Kikuyu people were put in detention camps by the British, and torture, rape, castration, starvation routine. And this is in the 1950s. This is not that long ago. This is in living memory. And survivors fought for decades for recognition. And only in 2013 did the UK government admit to torture and ill treatment and paid limited compensation. British destroyed the records of everywhere when they left. So in India, they destroyed all the records. In Kenya, they destroyed all the records. In a lot of places that Britain had, sunk its claws into, on the way out, they made sure to burn everything that they had done, so that there would be no there'd be no justice in the future. And then we got the Boer War. The Boer War, worth mentioning. This is a war fought by two different groups of white people in the very southern tip of Africa, bizarrely enough. But Britain invented the modern concentration camp during the Second Boer War from 1899 to 1902. Around 26,000 women and children, these were Afrikaner civilians, died of disease and malnutrition. And then another 20,000 black Africans died in separate camps. These examples show that Britain didn't just rule, it crushed dissent with cruelty. With cruelty that, I mean, in some places it's barely matched by the shit that's gone on elsewhere. If they want to say, oh, well, other people had slaves, well, if you want to talk about the bad things other countries have done, we go, well, hang on, what about what we did? But that doesn't get mentioned. Of course, it doesn't get mentioned. Britain crushed dissent, and the concentration camps in the Boer War were used as a template for the concentration camps in the Second World War, which weren't run by the British, they were run by the Nazis. And then we've got Palestine, obviously very topical at the moment. We've got Britain ruled Palestine under the Mandate, violently suppressing Arab revolts, laying the foundations of the modern conflict that is going on there to this day. Now there are people dying in Palestine because of Britain's tinkering with the place. Cyprus, in the 1950s, Britain detained, tortured and executed members of the EOKA movement who resisted colonial rule, which sowed the seeds for the division of Cyprus that would happen in the 70s. Malaysia, from 1948 to 1960, Britain waged a brutal, what they called emergency war, which hardly ever gets mentioned, with collective punishment and forced resettlement that affected hundreds of thousands of Malaysians and people on the Malay Peninsula, that included Singapore at the time. And these atrocities are not covered in British classrooms anyway, leaving the impression that the empire ended peacefully, even benevolently. Yeah, we took down the flag and we took off our wig and we bowed our head and we sang "God Save the King" and then we left. Yeah, that's what happened, and it was fine. No, we set a lot of these countries up when they got independence. We set them up to fail. We set them up knowing that they only had one university graduate in the entire nation, knowing the people that we were putting in charge weren't the best people to put in charge, and not having a sufficient handover period. It's interesting when you look at countries that have done quite well since. Now, they generally, not in every case, but they generally had longer handover periods. There were countries where we just left overnight, we just up sticks and went, well, you don't want us to rule you, then you can sod off. These countries were left in dire straits. And don't forget, in the second half of the 20th century, a lot of these countries are crushed under debts. So Britain or France or Portugal or whatever, they fucked off, right? Leaving the people there. And then oligarchs, authoritarians took control. What happened next? Well, they wanted money, didn't they? They wanted money to make palaces and golden taps and golden toilets, just like Donald Trump. And how can they get money? Well, the IMF was there, wasn't it? Oh, we'll lend you money. British banks were there. Yeah, Barclays, we'll lend you money. Yeah, sure, no worries about it. HSBC, yeah, go ahead, have some money, right, And they lent that money to these authoritarian leaders, right? And then, after much bloodshed and a civil war or two, or a coup d'etat, these leaders were deposed. And maybe in these countries they had a fledgling democracy. We have a democracy, hurrah, a democracy at last. And yet they're saddled with the debts of the last guy. Sorry, what? Imagine moving into a new house, right? And after moving into the house, you discover that the person who had the house before you owed the bank £1 million. And you're like, okay, what's that got to do with me? You lent him that money. You didn't lend it to me. And they're like, no. You have to pay it because now you're living in the house. What? What? How? What? Yeah. So, yeah, great stuff. Great stuff. There was Britain and other colonial nations, and even you could argue this about the apartheid regime in South Africa. They may have pulled out politically, but they never pulled out economically. The apartheid regime made sure that they continued to own all the diamonds. They had control over the diamonds, not the new government under Nelson Mandela at the time. Tim Ballum, thank you very much for the £5 super chat. It's very kind of you. Only found out the other day that Hawaii was illegally taken over by the US. Yes, it absolutely was. Hawaii, which still has the Union flag in the corner of its flag, of its state flag. A bunch of whiteys from the US came over and basically annexed the place. And said, it's okay, we're going to make you a state now in the 50s. And I'm kind of glad in a way that American colonialism just extended only to like Hawaii, American Samoa, the Philippines, Puerto Rico. When America decided to go out and cause trouble in other countries and other places to other people, there's a part of me that's glad that it wasn't as extensive as what Britain did or what France did or what Portugal did or Spain or Germany or Italy. But at the same time, it's like, I'd rather they hadn't done that at all. I've told you before in the past, I've told you about when I was on a cargo ship going to the Philippines, chatting with the captain who was a Filipino, and he said, I wish we'd been colonized by the British, you know. And I went, what? The British were awful, and I listed all the terrible things. And he said, yeah, but we got colonized by the Americans, and so now we have religion and guns. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, we probably wouldn't have particularly brought those things across. And one of the things where Britain was more successful in some ways than other colonizers, than other empire builders, was that we didn't necessarily need to make everyone a Catholic. If people wanted to remain a Hindu or a Sikh or a Zoroastrian, we kind of, generally speaking, we went, yeah, okay, you continue your religion. And then what we did was we played the religions off against each other, whereas the French in particular, they wanted everyone around the world in their colonies to be little French people, so they wanted them to just speak French and to adopt the French religion of Catholicism. Tim, thank you very much for the £5 super chat. Can you get Guard the Leaf on as you're in his backyard? I don't know, Tim. I don't know Guard the Leaf, but that's a cool name because obviously it's the little leaf. Did anyone notice there's a little Canada, there's a little leaf of Canada in the brew there, a little maple leaf in the actual cup of coffee? No, okay, just me then. Well, anyway, thank you very much to Tim for that super chat. That's very kind of you. I shouldn't do most of these shows about history lessons because I think if I just go off on one about how much I hate Farage or Trump, I tend to get more super chats. But stay with me for this. So we're nearly finished anyway. I nearly got through my little rant about shit things Britain did in the past. How whitewashing works, the island story, how Britain's always the victim, never the aggressor. The migrants are being cast as intruders, not citizens of once colonised lands. And this balance trick, this thing that they do on the BBC all the time, where they bring in someone who's got this data from drilling ice cores in the Antarctic, or they've put weather balloons up, satellite data, been studying the situation for decades, and they've got all this data together, this petabytes of data, and they're like, yes, the world is definitely warming, and it's definitely because of us. And then they have to bring on some clown who says, oh no, I don't believe it, for balance. Yeah, and this is the same thing they're trying to do with our history. This is for every mention of slavery, they force teachers to cite another country's sins, minimising Britain's role. It's whataboutism. Whataboutism was created in the Soviet Union, by the way. It's a Soviet trick, which we still seem to be stuck with today. And using infrastructure as excuses, like we built railways. we never invaded Japan. We never annexed Japan, and they have some of the best railways in the world. How did that happen? Without us invading them and teaching them how to make the railways. What? Not much better railways than we do in Britain. And then you've got the selective memory. Dunkirk and D-Day taught in detail, but Amritsar and what we did to people during the Mau Mau uprisings in Kenya, that vanishes. We're not going to talk about Amritsar. And that was the 1919 massacre under General Dyer in India. And this is the strategy of denial. It doesn't outright say atrocities didn't happen. It drowns them out in balance until they feel trivial. They want to trivialize the shit we did in the past and go, was it really that bad? I don't think it was that bad. Yes, it was. It really was. And we're still living with the repercussions to this day. And, look, erasing empire justifies cruelty in the present. If slavery was normal and deportations today are fine, if Britain was civilizing, then today's migrants owe Britain gratitude, not rights. And if Britain was always noble, then unions, protests and resistance are automatically illegitimate. Whitewashing history is not an academic exercise, it's a scaffolding for authoritarianism, and I can't get that across to the degree that I really want to people, because it's a difficult and nuanced thing to argue, and obviously you need to know your facts and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, if they want to go after our curriculum, if Farage and his creeps get in, they're going to do this. They're going to make sure that the national curriculum, which doesn't have to be taught in private schools, keep saying this. Private schools don't have to pay tax. They have to pay VAT now, but they can pass that on to the parents. They don't have to pay tax. They don't have to pay capital gains tax. They're registered as charities, so they get gift aid. They don't have to follow the national curriculum. They don't have to be vetted by Ofcom, what are they called? Ofsted. The amount of shit they get away with is unbelievable. The teachers don't need to be qualified. The teachers don't need to be qualified to work in a private school. And the Tories are like, no, this is a good thing because you can get like an Olympic athlete they could teach at the school. No, I'll tell you what they can do, right? They're an Olympic athlete, that's great, but they're not anymore because you've only got like 8 years that you can conceivably win medals when you're in your 20s, because after that, younger people will be faster. That's just time. That's just, the law of entropy. You've got 2, maybe 3 Olympics in you if you're lucky, and then do a PGCE. It takes about a year. Go get a fucking PGCE and then you can teach. It's fine, but it's like, oh, I'm a a gold medal winning javelin thrower. Okay, cool. Does that mean that you can automatically drive any vehicle? You don't need to have a driving lesson or a driving test or a license because you've got this gong. Anyway, but you can say that about racing drivers as well. Imagine like a racing driver didn't have a British license, right? Didn't have a license to drive on our roads, and the government were like, oh well, they're a racing driver, so they know how to drive. I was like, yeah, but they still got to take the test. They're from another country, and we don't have a reciprocal agreement for acknowledgement of licenses. I think the idea is you can drive for so many weeks on a foreign license if you're renting a car, but if you want to have a car in this country, you do have to get a British license eventually. That was something that we didn't have to worry about when we were part of the EU, if you went to another country in the EU, but now you have to get a separate license. Thanks, Farage. Anyway, so it's very important to me that it's not just the atrocities that we mention. Yeah, I think that it's also really important that we talk about the resistance that these atrocities inspired. The Amritsar massacre directly led to Gandhi becoming politicized in India to get rid of British rule. He'd already become politicised when he lived in Durban in South Africa. He had fought for rights for Indians, not for black people, just for Indians to be able to sit in the same part of the train as white people. And he was trained as a lawyer. And obviously, when he went back to India and after the Amritsar massacre, he was like, he was like, fuck this. I don't think he used that language, but he was. And enslaved people revolted across the Caribbean, forcing abolition onto Britain's agenda. The Garifuna people of Belize and Guatemala, they were slaves who rebelled in, I don't know, St. Lucia, St. Vincent Islands, and the British dumped them on the Mosquito Coast, thinking, oh, they're not going to live, they're not going to survive, and they didn't just survive, they thrived, and now you've got this vibrant Garifuna community there, and that was the foothold that the British used as an excuse for taking British Honduras, which became Belize, which Guatemala still has a claim over, by the way, so watch this space on that particular border. Anyway, so Indians fought for independence, and they proved that the empire could be defeated, and don't forget, a lot of the resistance against the empire which worked in India wasn't violent. It wasn't people going out and killing British officers or killing British civilians. It was just being stubborn bastards, just sitting down in the road, refusing to work, making their own salt, which apparently you weren't allowed to do if you were Indian. And then you've got Kenyans and Cypriots and Malaysians. They resisted the empire's brutality as well. And these stories matter because they show us that change is possible. Rights, and also that rights are won. They're not given from above, from on high. And this matters now because, look, people that can't remember their past are people who can't resist, who don't have the tools available to resist a fascist future. And Britain's real history of slavery, famine, massacre, empire is foundational to today's multicultural society. We were never I remember someone complaining about, there was a movie that came out a few years ago, wasn't it, 1917, it was all done in one shot, and people were complaining that there were Sikh soldiers in the trenches. Oh, why is there a Sikh there? Because there were. Because there absolutely were. The people from all over the empire fought in World War One and World War Two. On the British side. Where do you think the fucking Gurkhas come from? What the anyway, so that the idea that there was a glorious past where Britain was this monoculture is bullshit. We've always been an island nation. We've always been invaded and invading. Our name in England literally means country of foreigners. It means Angleland. The Angles were from northern Germany. It means country of people who never came from here. That's the name of England. In fact, Scotland's same. The Scots originally were from Ireland. So that's another country that actually means this is the land of people who weren't born in this particular bit of land. Who didn't pop out their mum on this particular, point of longitude and latitude. So yeah, I mean, just the idea that we, in the past, it was just white people as far as the eye can see. I mean, piss off. Look at Shakespeare. He wrote Othello about a mixed marriage between a black guy and a white woman. Just saying. Anyway, so yeah, Farage and Refuck UK, they know that erasing the history of our own country in the parts that they want to tip X out, they know that this helps them to erase the rights of migrants, of minorities, of working people, and their right to exist as equals. They're just there because of the benevolence of the rich, which is the society which the oligarchs want to create. It's their benevolence allowing us to use their digital platforms or be able to watch their TV shows or movies or be able to read their newspapers. It's their benevolence. They're just being nice to us when they're not. They're very fucking far from nice, to quote the Arctic Monkeys. So yeah, our task right now is to remember these things and retell them and resist this whitewashing of our history. And defending history is, as far as I'm concerned, it's defending a democracy right now in this situation where we are. Because the moment that we forget where we came from, they win. The other side win. Anyway, that's what I want to say this morning about the whitewashing of history. I was going to do the paper review, but I've realised I've gone way over time, and I'm obviously at a friend's flat, so I don't want to be cutting too much into their day. But Circus in Town, don't be fooled by Farage Clown Act. Chancellor lifts lid on reforms fantasy economic plan, and it's not funny. That's from the Mirror, and obviously they've got pictures of people from the family because they have to. And then there's some more pictures of people in the family recreating that scene from Reservoir Dogs there with Prince Harry. Visa threat threat to states not taking back migrants. We've also got just 7 miles apart, but there's still a chasm between the warring princes, so obviously the people from the family are there. This is a really interesting story in The Guardian, and I was going to do this today, but I'm thinking of maybe doing it tomorrow. The stuff that's coming out in what's called the Boris Papers, which is all about Boris Johnson and his crooked business dealings, which have been leaked to a website which isn't, it's called DDoS. This website that's been leaked to, and they have not shared it with everyone like what WikiLeaks did. They've only shared it with certain journalists, and some of the journalists they've shared it with are in The Guardian, and they're writing up about this crooked, corrupt, privately educated piece of shit, wife-beater scumbag, Boris Johnson, who everyone thinks is, our favourite little British clown, and he's not. He's an absolute fucking piece of vermin. We've got the Daily Express here, shocking toll of 500,000 sick days at tax officers. A picture of the people from the family there as well, and then we've got the Bling Office, Bling Oval Office fake fool's gold, saying that all the bling around the White House isn't actual real gold. Unsurprisingly, Labour left plot revenge on Starmer after. I don't know. And then we've got, I assume after the departure of Angela Rayner, and then 4 in 5 NHS hospitals are failing. And 135 million pound cocaine bust is just the tip of the iceberg. Okay, listen, come here. I've got one clever way, right? One secret way, right? You'll never believe this, right? This is some clickbait for you, right? I've got a secret way to win the war on drugs. Okay, here we go, come on. If you want to stop people from taking cocaine, right? All we have to do, 3 simple words, and there'll be no more cocaine. Eat the rich. There we go. Done. Job's a good one. Thank you very much. Thanks for tuning in. Anyway, I'll go back to the papers very quickly, to the Financial Times here. Countries failing to take back migrants threatened with retaliation over visas. That's Trump being a twat. And then we've got, actually, is that us being a twat, or is that Trump being a twat? Let me just check. Call to play ball from Mahmood. Home Secretary focused on border. UK could withhold documents. Okay, all right, okay. So that's obviously Britain. I thought they were talking about America, but no, there's a Britain thing. So essentially, if a country won't take back migrants who have come over here, we don't allow other people from that country to get visas to come here. I don't know if that's going to work. I doubt it. Well, it's not going to stop people coming over without a visa, is it? Union chiefs tell PM don't axe Rayner's workers' rights charter, which I'd be very surprised if they do axe that, because that could be one of the few things that Labour actually get commended for. It's not going to be for anything else, is it? Well done, Labour. You've committed yourselves to a new Section 28. Dickheads. Anyway, Trump is always one of them. Humans are not the only animals who like to get high. Mr. Scam says Boris's first job was on a wind farm and drove a tractor. Was on a farm, sorry, and drove a tractor through the side of a barn in the first week. Yeah, he's completely useless. He is a completely useless person. He is just he's a clown. The guy's a clown. Like he's the court jester. It's like putting the court jester in charge of the country, which is what Trump is as well. He's even worse than the court jester. He's just like a court psychopath. Anyway, so I'm going to get going now. So thank you so much for joining me this morning as I wanged on about history and how important it is that we actually acknowledge the shit that went down in the past. And I'm going to bugger off. I've got some movies to go and watch today. What am I watching today? I'm going to have a look on my schedule. I'm sorry. I was really planning to do more stuff from down on the street, but I'm just not getting the signal that I thought. I bought a Canadian SIM card, but even sending messages, because there's so many people and you have that effect where there's loads of people all using their phones at once, you don't necessarily get priority. And that's what happened to me. So I'm not being able to do that, which is a bit shit. So what am I seeing today? I'm going to see Ballad of a Small Player with Colin Farrell and Tilda Swinton. It's by the director of Conclave, Edgar Berger, and that's on at 3:30 tonight. Sorry, 3:30 this afternoon for me, but it'll be tonight for you. It will be at 8:30 for you. So maybe I'll do a quick little thing, see if I can do a little bit of live casting from the queue or something, getting in. I don't know. I'll try something, but if you would be so kind to hit the subscribe button and then hit the bell notification, you will find out if I'm going to go randomly live here from the Toronto International Film Festival. There might be someone famous walking past and I might go, oh my God, it's whoever. Anyway, so thanks very much for watching, and until tomorrow at, what time is it for you? I've forgotten what time. I think I went on at 1:30, was it? 1:30? 1:30, yeah. So hopefully I'll see you about 1:30, as long as I don't have any more technical problems, for another Canada Brew. And until then, I'll say thank you so much for watching. Thanks for sticking with the channel throughout my trials and tribulations and travels. And yeah, thanks for the super chats. Really appreciate that. Give us a like on the way out. We always like a like. And yeah, that's about it. Until next time, hello, good evening, welcome, and goodbye.